But I believe in these days where you're seeing a change in the church, it's not Christ concealed, it's not Christ revealed, but it's Christ lived. Well, now with this new generation, or this what you call, we're seeing a new type of awakening where they're not drawn to the traditional things of man. They're not drawn. You can't move them the way you move the others. And so this new dispensation is really to be able to see Christ in the midst of all of the young people as his life being breathed and moved and have their being through them.
Yeah.
And so that's where the power is. The power is it's really coming to break religion. It's break religion, it's breaking traditions, it's breaking every cultural thing that we held true to say that it has power. It has no power. It has the form of godliness, it has the form, but it has not the power. The power to awaken, to bring people to a relationship, an intimacy with God that they never had before. Got to see Christ in one another and break down what we think is true anointing and true power, and people are hurting because of their identity. Welcome to Just Men, a life-changing program that resonates hope as well as encouragement. The program that gives you information and inspiration for the glory of God. I'm your host, Jeff Tate, and thank you for joining Just Men. On today's program, we have a very special guest. This is his first time being on Just Men. Please welcome Dr. Bobby Jones.
Thank you, my brother. It's good to be with you.
Oh, it's a tremendous pleasure. It is a tremendous pleasure. And let me say on the onset, you add value to Just Men, and we're grateful and we're honored for your presence.
Well, thank you. What kind of value do I add?
We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out as we unveil, and it was what I call turning the pages of the book and kind of start to lay the foundation of who is Dr. Bobby Jones.
Okay, whatever you want, whatever you want. Congratulations, by the way. And being on the air for over 30 years, I think you said?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years,
yes,
yeah. Congratulations, sir.
Well, thank you.
Just
thank
men.
You. Just men. Just men. To be upright before the Father.
Yeah,
so,
I got you.
So we really are honored. And like I said, I mean, there's so many things that we can take a snapshot of your life and all the accomplishments and the achievements and the people that you've influenced. But I really want to go deeper underneath what's driving you, what inspired you, and what was the pivotal point in your life.
So where you
the
want to
light
start?
comes on.
Where do you want to start?
I want to start in your upbringing. I want to talk about that part of you that gave inspiration, and who was the people behind that inspiration to create what we see today.
Well, Jeff, I'm from a little town in West Tennessee. The town was called Henry, Henry. It's about 10 miles from another little city called Paris. So I was raised on a farm, and I did all the things that farm boys do. Chop cotton, pick cotton, all those things, plowed, didn't do that kind of well, but I did it. So we went to a one-room schoolhouse with all grades in one room. That's how small the town was, 8 grades in one room.
Wow.
And then after you get through the 8th grades, then you can go to Paris to the high school. And it was called Central High School. So I graduated from high school when I was 15 and came to college at Tennessee State University when I was 15. Finished at 19, majored in elementary education. And after I graduated, I taught school for a number of years in St. Louis, Missouri. Then I came back to Nashville to work. I was homesick and very young. Going to college at 15 was a little out of whack for me. I should have, I don't know whether I should have done it or not, but I learned the material easily, so it wasn't very difficult to get through. So I quit at one time because I was a kid, and I had to go back to Paris to be with my friends, but I came back the next year and finished with my class. So that's the beginning of that part, the educational part of it, and I did get that degree, a BS degree in elementary education. That's what my specialty was at the time. And then I moved back to Nashville. I wanted to come back to Nashville, and started working in public schools here. And after I did that, I was spotted by a guy from McGraw-Hill Publishers. At that time, the school systems in the urban communities were lacking kids being able to read, So this company, McGraw-Hill, had material that they would try to sell, to all the schools in the area. They call them the NDA schools, and that's where these special programs were. So one of the guys who worked with that company came to the school to introduce his materials and everything, and saw me teaching and how I was teaching, and asked if I would come and be a consultant for McGraw-Hill Publishing. So we had a program called Programmed Reading. We were teaching children how to read through the phonetic approach instead of the look-say approach. Do you know the difference between those?
I have no idea.
Okay,
no
okay.
idea.
Phonetic approaches mean you learned how to using your vowels and putting them with your consonants and being able to pronounce words using that, like you know, the three, you know about that one.
Yes, I definitely
Okay,
do.
and then the look-say means you just teach kids how to read by telling him what the word is. And they say the word, the teacher says the word, and then the student learned the words from that. So they wasn't finding that to be very efficient for kids. So it didn't make that much difference. Some kids learn from look-say, some kids learn from using the phonetic approach, and but that was the approach that I used. I worked for them all over the world, actually, for about 4 or 5 years. Back to Nashville again, and started working back in the school system here for 1 year. And I was able to use the same program that I used with children, that I worked with children while I was with McGraw-Hill. I was able to bring that program and put it in the school where I worked when I came back here. A couple of years, then I went to Tennessee State, started teaching there in the reading department, because that's, you know, I was a linguist, and that's what I was able to do. So that's just a little bit of the educational background. While I was here, my brother Jeff, I made it through college because of church women. I was a boy, and I didn't have very much, and I taught myself how to play the piano and played for the Sunday school and all, and I was likable, I suppose, but those very wonderful ladies in the church were the ones that helped me to get through school, because we were very poor. You know, we had no money, so we had to find a way to make some money so I could go to school. I finished when I was 19, however, and that's kind of how that worked. So I was intrinsic in the spirit of the church here in Nashville. Not only did I do one church, many more, and I never really learned how to read notes, but I played by ear. And how I made it through that, I don't know, but I became a very good piano player. Had a choir, you know, and all. So the difference was I went to a church in this little town where I'm from. It's called Methodist Church. So their services weren't like the Baptist, because I played the piano for the Baptist church, which was a little bit frightening for me in the beginning. I had never seen, in the Methodist church, we didn't march in, you know. And here we come to the Methodist church, marching down the aisle to get to the choir stand, but it was fun, and it was interesting. I called my mama, "Mama, you should see these people, they marching in the church with robes on." We didn't do that. And then the preachers started preaching, and the difference in delivery was amazing to me, because they would talk directly to the people, and then they would add a little accent on the voices, you know, you know, and God, Mama, they answered the preacher back. It was a very interesting experience, but I think because of that association, God was in my plan all the way, because I never expected to have accomplished some of the things that I have done in this life of mine. Since I'm going on 82 now, it's a pleasure to have had the experiences in every continent, on every continent except one. Guess what it was? Guess what it was? Guess the continent that I didn't go on. Antarctica. Oh, you know I was going to Africa.
Is it too cold in Antarctica?
Yeah, Antarctica. I wasn't going to go there, you know. Yeah, no, I went to Africa several times, in 5 different countries, I think. I went to fight apartheid when that was in effect in South Africa, as a mission that we really wanted to go on. And there were other ministers that were there. We were visiting churches, white churches, and trying to talk to their pastors and all, and, you know, bring some sense in their minds, and let them, hey, you know, don't let people be segregated like this. You know what apartheid was all about. So that was the purpose of my going to South Africa, and got good experiences. And I think one of the things that I would always advise the younger people who are coming up nowadays to, if they get a chance to travel, see other cultures, and get exposure that way. It helps to enlighten you. It helps you to learn how to accept other people in their situations. And sometimes we don't get to do that, you know. So I think I was blessed to be able to do those things.
Wow, that's beautiful. Talk a bit about your gift. What do you feel is your gift? That God has sort of anointed you, and you've seen how it really operates. That's beyond what we call thinking. It's more something innate, something that's natural.
I think my ability to relate to people in a positive way is one of the major factors for me being able to move into the different areas of situations that I was placed in. I could learn quickly, obviously. You know, teaching, I'm 19 years old. Some of the students looked as old as I did then. I always credit a lot of what it was that helped me to do what I do by being guided by the Spirit of God. Man, there's no way, I don't think, I could have come out of Henry, Tennessee and end up being one of the leaders in the industry of gospel music, because we didn't even use gospel music, you know, in Methodist Church. How that developed, it was just the Spirit of God that did that. And I'm not a singer, but I can sing a little, you know, that, and formed groups, and it was always religiously guided. I think that was a good thing for me. Didn't know all the time that was going to be, you know, something I was going to do. I was satisfied that I had gotten a degree and I was going to be a teacher, and that was my life, you know, that's ever how that was going to be. Wow. I taught for a long time.
Yeah,
but that didn't end up being the major part of my life.
And that's what's amazing too, is many people are struggling with how to be guided by the Spirit. So let's talk a bit about that when you say that it was the Spirit and guided by the Spirit. Or many think that there is a preparation process to really know His voice and to know whether it is of the Spirit or is of the self. And they've made decisions that may not have been as successful, or at least as accomplishing as they would thought it would be. And so you've seen a transformation in your life, like Saul to Paul, from a school teacher to the things he done, and still sustaining you after those many years. So you know that that what has grabbed hold of you is the real thing. So talk a little bit about that process of preparing and listening to the Spirit.
Yeah, I wasn't really deep, you know what that means, into the spiritual aspect of what it meant to be a Christian. I was always knowledgeable about knowing and thinking that you had to have a Savior, you had to have a spiritual edge to yourself. So that helped me a lot. But I was not always prayerful, or in my coming up years. You know, it took time for me to grow into the reality of what it meant to become a practicing Christian. Now, Dr. Maya Angelou taught me that. She was with a lady one day, and this lady was a church woman, and she said, "Oh, I'm just a Christian, and I'm so happy to be a Christian." Maya said, "Well, my dear, you know my answer. You are a Christian already." She said, "No, you're practicing Christianity. You nobody is a full Christian until you know you get to complete your whole situation. Nobody's perfect but God." And so she said, like a doctor practices medicine, an attorney practices law, we practice Christianity because we make mistakes and we have to go over it and try to get it right, right? And that made sense to me, you know? So I'm a practicing Christian, and I guess you are too. Maybe you're already a Christian, I don't know. I think that's a good thing to think about, you know? And so I always thought about that a lot. So the unique thing about it is it was always a relationship with the church. And I don't know how that happened to match up, but through my inability to sing like real singers or play the piano like real keyboard players can do it, I had enough to get me where I needed to go. Not thinking specifically at any time where I wanted to end up, other than I told you before, I wanted to be a teacher. And I was a good one too. So the combination of learning and traveling and listening and finding things that was productive and having a loving mother. My father was an alcoholic, couldn't read, couldn't write. I had a brother and a sister. My brother was older, and he was very smart. He worked for the CIA till he passed away. And having had that kind of back support from my mom and these ladies in the church was always an inspiration for me to get things done. Challenges? Yes, plenty in many ways. Sometimes if you exhibit yourself as one who is relatively knowledgeable, sometimes people around you might not like that. You know, jealousies come in, and I'm young and smart and light-skinned at the time, tall, had a few ways with the ladies and things, so that was great for me, found one that caught me, and so, but that happened way down the line,
It had to be some chastening, I would imagine. The word talks about chastening. You said something that really pricked my spirit about the church and how you've learned through diversity in the church. You started reaching out to what you call the next generation. And I want to talk about this next generation, what you've seen in the transformation of the church, because I've experienced some changes in the church, and there's also been a change. So talk a bit about that change and how you address that change.
I want to talk about it, and I'm going to ask you some questions. There's, I talk about that a lot with my friends, how the church has changed. We're in the midst of another look of the church. After I got to Nashville, I got settled into going to this Baptist church and all. Then they'd have services 3 times a day. Sunday, 10 o'clock, no, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock service on Sunday, 3 o'clock service on Sunday afternoon, 7:30 service, BYPU and all of that. After doing all of that, and now, look at that. That doesn't happen anymore. Now we didn't. The mega church syndrome came about. The style of singing in the black church specifically is changing, and it went from Lord help me to hold out to Lord we praise you. You call that worship and praise music. So I'm watching the evolution of all of those things happening in church. Black people don't attend church the way we used to. I think it's probably because of the change in life. And the whole world changes, I suppose, And so the advent of all the technical stuff that we have nowadays and all has made a great difference in what's happening in then and in now. But things are supposed to change to the good and then to the questionable. It depends on how you internalize it and how you work with what you got and how you keep a sound principles, which I think are important to have. We know the good from the bad and things, and try to stay true to yourself. And fortunately, that's been a blessing for me. I did not like evil, as I mentioned to you about my father. That was the alcoholic, and I use that a lot when I talk to people about you can come out of conditions if you really want to, if you really put your mind to it, because there's no way that, as I was telling you earlier, that I never would have thought that I would have been a world traveler and a world-renowned personality. I just did never think that. I mean, and I met kings and of nations and been invited to do things with them and go to different countries year after year. We spent more time in Italy than we did in America, basically, and in Holland and all, and was able to learn an awful lot. And I wanted to learn. I really wanted to know a whole lot. I was like a little kid when you'd ask, "Mommy, why is that sun?" Yeah. I had them kind of questions when I was growing up. So I always kind of sought knowledge, and I think that helped to propel me to another position. And I recognized some of the changes in my life as I began to grow older, things that I did that were not apropos, but and I was able to. God gave me the ability to see that, and it perked my consciousness to see what's right and what's wrong and things like that. So I think the journey has been. I couldn't ask for more.
Talk about God's grace for you and what that really means. And
All of that. His grace is sufficient for me. What a good song. God's grace, His amazing grace. And that's how I receive the blessings that with my relationship with the Lord, knowing that I'm with Him and He's with me. Isn't that a great thing to have? Knowing that you're in His care, and when I talk to myself, I'm talking to God too. That's I probably internalize some of that a little differently than some people do. We got different denominations, different ways of thinking things, but I know it's because of God's grace, and that means the goodness, the kindness, all the provisions that He provides for us in life if we ask Him for it. I know that all came through the grace of God and His goodness and kindness. And I am a very good person, and I always have been, and I know that. And now I can say it freely. Sometimes you don't want to say that about yourselves. You know how careful you have to be sometimes about people. Oh, you think he is? Yeah, I'm a good guy, you know. And it was only because of God's grace that I was able to make it to where I am. Believe me, if you had any idea of what things the challenges, some people call them problems, and then surrounding myself with people that were knowledgeable as well. Like I mentioned Dr. Maya Angelou before, she was one of my great inspirations, and we were together all of the time. People like her and other great people from around the world, different occupations, different religions. I didn't cut myself off from a learning system. I had to develop a theory of life. And that's what my first doctorate helped me to do. Received my first one from Vanderbilt University. And that was a changing experience in my life. I developed a theory of life. It was, and I chose a topic, though, that maybe if I think about it, I shouldn't have done it that way. It was the amalgamation of blacks and whites. Have we become that? And that's what I did my study on. And of course, you know the answer. No, we still haven't been able to get into the total system. Not that. So that grace, and when I pray, I thank God for His grace. Don't you?
Oh,
yeah, His goodness and keeping me, they say, I can brag on it, they say I look much younger than I am, you know. Are you going on 82? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
you know, you've another thing about the grace of God, and I know we refer to it as unmerited favor. One of the things that I find the insecurity sometimes, you mentioned that, people are about this identity in Christ and this grace that He extends, just like the sun that shines on the good and the evil. And talk a little bit about what has been one of your greatest challenges of your faith, especially in terms of your identity or in terms of just the music industry and what it's developed into. I know you've come into many people who the facade up front is one way, but then the behind, they're really struggling with their identity and their security, sing beautifully and have a posture of worship, but yet there's still some insecurity behind that. How do you, and what has been the challenge of that?
I mean, when you come to singing part, you know, I surround myself with people who can.
Maybe that's the answer.
Who do what I can't do, you know, or don't do. But yeah, those insecurities were there, been there, still there. I managed to work myself through it, kind of like believing in myself and developing a different posture, a posture of life, not body posture, a posture in life, and continually seeking information, as I told you before. Yeah, challenges were great. They always will be. That's a part of life. And then you have to begin to realize that as well, you know, looking at the differences in races and religions and ethnicities, all the things that we are confronted with just by living, and how you can overcome those, or how you can meet those challenges, and how your vocabulary can change as it relates to Christianity. Oh, I got problems and problems. You have some challenges. It's a softer word than problems to me. Yeah, I can meet these challenges. I don't like to use problems hardly anymore for examples, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, as trying to come out of the educational, specific educational field as it related to teaching and all, going into television, going into radio, going into concert performances, going in as a major speaker in major situations across the world, gave me an opportunity to see the possibilities of what my life could be. And that helped. And then settling in with my family and all, you know. As you grow older, you're supposed to learn and you're supposed to grow, hopefully. And that has been a good source for my ability to be confronted with situations and be able to use my spirituality to help me understand whatever these situations can be. And man, there's no way that you can know when you're young or how to solve problems, how to use challenges instead of problems. You have to learn by finding the right people. God will lead you to that. Finding the right places, God will lead you to that. Finding the right activities, God will lead you to that. Well, through it all, God leads me, and I hear music. Do I hear music in the
air? You know, you have blessed us, and I don't know how the time went by so fast. We got to have you back.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, we've, but you touched our heart. I mean, you. If nothing else that I hear in your spirit is just allow God to be God in our lives. As we lay aside all the perspectives we have on life, but if we surrender to life and operate in love, it's amazing when you operate in love.
Yeah, that's the key.
Greatest learner, the greatest teacher in the whole process. What words of encouragement do you have in our last minute and a half?
For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And if he loved us that much, then we must return that love to our fellow man. We must learn how to love and live. And learning to live, there's an art to it. You have to study situations and learn how to put it in the right perspective. That's my thought.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Stay focused. Wow. God bless you.
Have we been talking half hour? About 28:30.